There are some silences that are not peaceful. They are heavy, loaded with questions that scream so loudly they threaten to deafen you. This is a story about that kind of silence, the story of a ship found sailing perfectly, with no one on board to guide her. This is the Mary Celeste, and her silence has been screaming for over 150 years. On November 7, 1872, the brigantine Mary Celeste set sail from New York Harbor, bound for Genoa, Italy. She was not a grand vessel, but she was sturdy, a workhorse of the sea. On board were 10 souls. Her captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs, a man known for his fairness and devout faith, his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, whose presence turned the ship's cabin from a simple workspace into a home, and a crew of 7 experienced sailors, 10 people sailing into the vastness of the Atlantic with a cargo of 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. For nearly a month, their voyage was, by all accounts, normal. Then, nothing. Our story truly begins on December 5th, when another ship, the Dei Gratia, spotted a vessel adrift some 400 miles off the coast of the Azores. Her sails were set but torn. She was yawing aimlessly in the wind, a ship moving with a distinct lack of purpose. The captain of the Dei Gratia, a man who happened to be a personal friend of Captain Briggs, hailed her. There was no response. He hailed her again. Only the wind and the waves answered back. A boarding party was sent. What they found was not a scene of bloody mutiny, nor the wreckage of a pirate attack. What they found was far more unsettling. They found a perfectly normal ship. Imagine stepping onto that deck. The first thing you'd notice is the quiet. Not the quiet of an empty room, but the quiet of a room that was just vacated. The ship was seaworthy, a little wet from sea spray, but structurally sound. In the crew's quarters, their belongings were neatly stowed. Their oilskin boots and pipes lay waiting for owners who would never return. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no bloodstains. In the ship's galley, there were ample provisions, enough food and water for 6 months. But the stove was cold, the pots and pans clean and stored. Down in the cargo hold, the 1,700 barrels of alcohol were almost entirely untouched. 9 had leaked, but the rest were secure. This was not a ship that had been ransacked. This was not a crew that had starved. The most personal and perhaps the most chilling discoveries were in the captain's cabin. Captain Briggs' logbook was found on his desk. The final entry was dated November 25th, 10 days prior. It recorded their position near the Azores and mentioned no trouble, no distress, nothing out of the ordinary. It simply stopped. Beside it lay his wife's things, a melodeon, a small organ, still in its place, and in the corner an imprint in a small cot, the faint impression of a sleeping child, 2-year-old Sophia. It was a home, frozen in the last moments of its existence. One vital piece of equipment was missing, the ship's only lifeboat. It seemed that for some reason, 10 people had willingly chosen to abandon a perfectly sound vessel and take to a tiny, fragile boat in the middle of the vast, unforgiving Atlantic. Why? That is the question that echoes from the deck of the Mary Celeste. That is the screaming silence. An experienced captain like Briggs would never abandon his ship unless the threat of staying was far, far greater than the risk of leaving. But what could that threat have been? The initial investigation in Gibraltar considered foul play, mutiny, but the crew were hand-picked and respected their captain. There were no signs of violence, and mutineers would have likely taken the ship and its valuable cargo, not abandoned it. Piracy? Unlikely. The crew's personal effects, some of them valuable, were untouched. The cargo was still there. Pirates are thieves, not ghosts, so the theories spiral outward, from the plausible to the fantastic. Some point to the 9 leaking barrels of alcohol. Did fumes fill the hold, creating the fear of an imminent explosion? Did Captain Briggs, fearing for his wife and child, order a temporary evacuation into the lifeboat, intending to stay tethered to the ship? Perhaps a sudden storm severed the rope, leaving them stranded as their sturdy, empty ship sailed away without them. It's a logical theory, but it's clean, too clean. It doesn't account for the feeling, the deep, gnawing wrongness of the scene. Other theories are darker. A seaquake, a sudden, violent upheaval of the ocean floor that could have panicked the crew into thinking the ship was breaking apart. An attack by a giant squid, a legend as old as the sea itself. Some have even whispered of paranormal intervention, of a force that simply plucked 10 souls from the deck, leaving everything else behind. We will never know. And that is the true horror of the Mary Celeste. It's not a story of what happened. It's a story of what didn't. There was no final, desperate log entry, no note scrawled and left in a bottle, no wreckage ever found, no bodies ever recovered. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their daughter Sophia, and the 7 men of their crew sailed into a mystery. They became the occupants of a ghost story, their last moments forever unwitnessed, their final fears forever unspoken. The Mary Celeste was found, it was salvaged, and it even sailed again under new owners, forever marked as a cursed ship. But its 10 souls, they simply vanished. They left behind a perfectly good ship, a table set for a life that was about to continue, and a silence that asks a terrible, unending question. What could possibly be so terrifying that you would choose the empty ocean over the safety of your own ship?
Subscribe for more.